This is the Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, Bo Cook from Loan Market, BTZD, the official apparel partner of the Paracave Podcast, and the Parramatta Times, the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. Troy Warner here, and this is the Tipping Podcast. It is Tuesday, Team List Tuesday, so the teams are out in both the men's and the women's competitions, so why not do another tipping podcast? So anyway, we're going to start with the NRL W, and first up we have the Roosters taking on the Dragons. The Roosters coming off a loss against the Raiders, a first time win for the Raiders in the NRL W, and the Dragons having a pretty comfortable win over the Eels, 38 points to 12. So the Roosters are pretty star-studded squad. They've got a lot of superstars, such as Isabel Kelly, Jessica Sergis, Taryn Aiken, Millie Boyle at front row. So a couple of superstars there. Racy McGregor, she's a halfback for the Dragons. Dally M, last year's Dally M winner in the NRLW. So she will be leading them around the park again this week. But I'm going to tip the Roosters in this one. The second game in the NRLW sees another new team in the competition. The Cowboys take on the Broncos, in which is a all Queensland affair. Now, the Cowboys having their first win also last week in the NRLW, and the Broncos, unfortunately, coming ninth at the moment, 0 from 2, with many thinking they would be going a lot better as they are at the moment. The Broncos coming off a loss to the Titans, 17 points to 16, while the Cowboys defeated the Newcastle Knights, last year's premiers, 31 points to 20, so a good win there to the Cowboys. This one's up at Queensland Country Bank Stadium up in Townsville on Saturday at 12:50pm, 10 to 1. And look, I think this is going to be an interesting game. I think the Broncos, they're going to need to get off to a winning way in this competition if they're going to keep track with the leaders. It's only 2 rounds down now, and I just think that the experience of the Broncos will get the win over the Cowboys in this one, and they will start their winning way. So I'm going to tip the Brisbane Broncos to get their first win of the season on Saturday. The third game sees the Sharks playing the Titans. Now, the Titans are on fire at the moment in this competition. They are coming second to the Tigers, but they have won both games. They had a win last week against the Broncos, 17 points to 16. The Sharks went down to that team that is in front of them, the Tigers, and they also lost Emma Tonagato in that game as well. So it was only a 10-0 loss to the Tigers, but nevertheless, a loss is a loss. And look, this week they are playing the Titans, who, as I said, 2 from 2. Emma Tonagato has been named at 5'8", so that is good to see. The Titans, they've got a star-studded side as well. They've probably surprised a lot of people this year by winning both those games. And the Sharks, well, look, it's at PointsBet Stadium. I think I'm going to go the Sharks in this one. I think in a close game, I think they'll just get the win over the Titans. On Sunday, the first game at 12 p.m. at CommBank Stadium sees the Parramatta Eels take on last year's premiers, the Newcastle Knights. Now, the Newcastle had a loss last week to the Cowboys, 31 points to 20. The Eels are still yet to register a win this year in the NRLW and unfortunately sit last on the ladder. They had a big loss to the Dragons last week. They are still missing Rachel Pearson and Elsie Albert as well. They're two off-season signings. They still haven't played. They may be another 2 to 3 weeks away, unfortunately. So they'll be missing Rachel's guidance around the park. And look, and the Newcastle Knights, they'll be dirty against that loss last week against the Cowboys. It was a really good game last week. They will be wanting to get back into that winning circle. Hannah Southwell, the captain, she comes back into that lock position, which is great to see. Her sister Jessie at halfback as well, running the team around. It saddens me to say, but I think the Newcastle Knights will get this win over the Eels. Look, the Eels, they played some good footy in round one against the Tigers at CommBank Stadium and really held it to them for most of the game, but unfortunately got run down in that game. I think Newcastle will get the win, as much as it hurts me to say that. Although I'd love to see Parramatta get their first win in the NRLW. The last game of the NRLW sees the Raiders take on the Tigers, two new teams in this competition. The Raiders, they are coming in 8th position at the moment. They had their first win last week in this competition against the Cronulla Sharks. And the Tigers, they're flying. They're scoring a lot of points and they are on top of the table. So they are playing some really good football at the moment. Kezzy Apps, she scored a great try last week. It was about a 20-25 metre effort, untouched, and a great try there. The Canberra Raiders, well, they're back at home, or they're at home again this week, so second game at home, GIO Stadium, against the Tigers. I just can't go past the Tigers at the moment. They're playing some really good footy, scoring some great tries, and I think they'll get the win in this one. Ironically, the Raiders are playing the Tigers in the NRL as well, so pretty coincidental there. Look, I'm going to go the Tigers in this one. The Raiders, they were good last week, but it's going to be tough to beat the Tigers, who are high flying on the top of the ladder there. So I'm going to go the Tigers in that one. Alrighty, time to go for the NRL now, and it kicks off with the Roosters taking on the Sea Eagles. The Roosters, they had the loss against the Broncos last week. The Sea Eagles had a good win last week against the Dragons. And look, the Sea Eagles, they'll be keen to get this win at the cricket ground in Sydney, the SCG, because they can still make the top 8. So they've got that massive incentive there. The Roosters struggling in 14th position. They'll want to get the win to save face and probably try and get a little bit of pride back into the jumper and to playing an arch enemy in the Manly Sea Eagles. The last time these two teams met was back in July, and it was only a 2-point win to the Sea Eagles at Brookvale Oval, so could be a little bit of a tough game there between these two sides. And for the Manly side, it sees Matt Lodge starting prop against his old side, the Roosters, so that'll be an interesting clash there, obviously with Jared Warrior-Hargreaves as well, so clash of the two big men there. That'll be an interesting one to see. Ben Trebojevic, he comes back onto the bench as well. Aaron Woods is there, Dean Madison there, And look, I think this game, the Sea Eagles have probably more to play than the Roosters. So, look, I think I'm going to tip the Sea Eagles in this one, only just. The second game of the round, which is the first game of Friday, sees the Titans take on the Warriors at Seabus Super Stadium. The Titans had a good win against the Cowboys, who ended their winning streak last week. And the Warriors, they had the bye last week, but they're sitting pretty in third position on the ladder inside the top four. So they are looking pretty good to see out the season in a top four position. So they've had a massive season this year, a great season, and it's great to see them playing some great footy. The Titans, they've been a little bit up and down this year, coming in 12th position at the moment. They've had an up and down year. They're still without Big Tino. He is still suspended. I think this is the last week of his suspension, and he'll be back next week. But I think it'll be interesting to see how the week off will do the Warriors. It could do them some good, but they would love to have had that momentum going into this game. So previous to the bye, they were on a 3-game winning streak, and we remember the game before the Raiders game, it was 21-20, a Sean Johnson field goal won that game. So they've named an unchanged lineup from that game. So going to be interesting to see how they go after the bye, but I'm going to tip the Warriors in this one. And I think this one could be a high-scoring game as well. A lot of points in these two sides, but I'm going to tip the Warriors in this one and keep on marching towards September. Friday night, 8 p.m, the second game on the Friday night sees a cracker of a game. First versus fourth, the Panthers versus the Storm at Penrith at Bluebet Stadium. Sees a great game. This is going to be a real test. The Melbourne Storm smashed the Parramatta Eels last week, 46-16, and the Panthers shut out the Sharks 28-0 at Bluebet Stadium. So second game in a row at home for the Panthers. But look, this is a great game. These two teams only played not so long ago, and it was a win to the Panthers that day, 34 points to 16. Nathan Cleary wasn't playing that day, but it was an Isaac Tungo absolute special that day, that night. He absolutely carved Melbourne up, scoring a double, and he was just some great runs there. So that was at Marvel Stadium. This one's at Bluebet Stadium. Isaac's not playing this week. He has been ruled out. He's been named as number 20 on the reserves bench, but it might be... he might not come back this week. Zach Hosking has taken his spot in that centre position with Tyrone Peachy being suspended. So a big in for Melbourne. Nelson Asafa-Solomona comes back into the side after a finger injury, back into the second row for Melbourne. And look, just at home, I think the Panthers will just keep on rolling on. They're just warming up for September, and that's what they really want. They want that third premiership in a row. I think this could be, and Penrith's defence as well this year has been pretty good, and Melbourne are going to find it hard to score points against them. Still no Justin Olam, and they've still got that young Tanamapia and Marion Seve in the centres. So a interesting centre combination there, but I think Cameron Munster and Jerome Hughes are the key. They led the team around last week. Jerome Hughes had a great game, scored a great try. Harry Grant as well at hooker position as well. Got to keep your eye on him, but I think the Panthers at home, they're going to get that win there. The Cowboys and the Broncos. So a Queensland derby at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. It's 3 p.m. on Saturday. Second versus eighth. The Broncos, they're high flying, equal points as the Panthers, just coming second with 4 and against. But the Cowboys, they'll be disappointed. They lost last week against the Titans. A good chance for them to secure their spot in the top 8. Now they're on equal points with a lot of other sides as well. The Broncos, they'll be going for 5 in a row, having last start winners over the Roosters, 32 points to 10. The Cowboys, they will be without Valentine Holmes. I should say could be without Valentine Holmes, who is at the moment, whilst recording this podcast, is trying to fight his charge of a contact with the head. So second week in a row he's been sin-binned for that one, so he's at the judiciary trying to fight that charge. So he's been named in that centre position, but it will be I don't think he'll be playing. I think he'll be suspended tonight. But these games have always been pretty sort of close encounters between these two sides. There was a period there after the 2015 grand final where the Cowboys got that one in extra time. But there's always been some close games between these two sides since. A field goal here and there on either match had done the result there. But last time these two teams played was early on this season at Suncorp Stadium. It was the Broncos getting the chocolates that day, 28 points to 16 in front of 43,000 fans. So a little bit smaller stadium, Queensland Country Bank Stadium, but no doubt it will be a full house there between these two great rivals. The clash between Scott Drinkwater and Reece Walsh will be one to watch for admission alone. The forward packs, they are pretty good themselves. Thomas Flegler, Payne Haas versus Jason Taumalolo, Luciano Leilua, Ruben Cotter versus Patrick Carrigan will be a good battle as well. Pat Carrigan getting his first NRL try after 78 games, so great to see there. Look, I'm going to go the Broncos in this one. I just think there'll be too many points in the Broncos side. Queensland Country Bank Stadium, the Cowboys are always a better side up there, but they are outsiders in this game. I think the potential loss of Valentine Holmes will be a big one for them. So I think the Broncos, they'll just keep on marching on as well, going win for win with the Panthers. So Broncos in that one. The next game on Saturday, 5:30, is the first game of a double-header over at Optus Stadium in Perth. So a double-header over there sees the Dolphins take on the Knights, the Newcastle Knights, who are coming in 9th position at the moment and looking on a bit of a charge towards the top 8 this year. They've gone 4 wins in a row. They're going for 5 wins in a row. And look, the last time these two sides met was early on in March this year, and the Dolphins got the win there, 36-20. When the Dolphins started the season, they were winning games. They were winning games each week and surprising a lot of people. And this was one of the wins that they got. So 36-20 was last time they played. They've only played the one time, obviously. And Ewan Aiken is out for the Dolphins, so that sees Cody Nikorima take his centre spot with Anthony Milford going into the 5/8 position, with Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow back to fullback. And I think that's a good move. I think Anthony Milford, he showed a little bit of spark when he came on last week against the Bulldogs, so played some good footy there. And just looking through these two sides, the Newcastle Knights, they've got the same side that played last week and won. Obviously, Kalen Ponga, he'll be the man that the Dolphins will be keen to keep an eye on. He's been in great form ever since he hasn't played Origin this year. Dominic Young has been scoring tries after tries. And look, I think Newcastle have got too much to win. This could be a danger game for Newcastle, actually, I think, because I think the Dolphins might. They played okay against the Bulldogs last week. Their last win was against the Titans 23-21. They lost to the Panthers 24-14. The close loss, they should have got the Bulldogs last week. But you would like to say that Newcastle are the form team at the moment, having 4 wins in a row. And Newcastle have too much to play for. I'm going to go Newcastle just in a tight one. I think the Dolphins could really stand up to the Knights, but just with that drive to play top 8 finals football, I think the Newcastle Knights will get the win. The second game in the doubleheader over at Optus Stadium in Perth sees the Rabbitohs take on the Sharks in what should be an entertaining clash, 6th versus 7th. So 2 teams that will want to keep their final top 8 chances alive. They'll want to secure their spot in the top 8. The Rabbitohs having a good win 32-18 up in Tamworth against the Tigers. The Sharks shut out against the Panthers last week 28-0. Cameron McInnes tackling a NRL record 83 tackles, I think it was. So magnificent, massive effort from Cameron McInnes to do that. But look, to be shut out by the Panthers. The Sharks are struggling at the moment. They've had 3 losses in a row. They will want to try and win this game to stay in that top 8, but the William Kennedy is a big loss for them at fullback there. Connor Tracy takes his spot, but William Kennedy, a hamstring injury, I believe, so he'll be out for a couple of weeks. There was talk that Nico Hines would go back to fullback and perhaps Connor Tracy go into the halves, but that wasn't to be. So they've whacked Connor Tracy back into fullback position. He's a bit of a utility player, can play fullback, wing, centre, 5'8", half. So a bit of a utility player there. And Latrell Mitchell, it's his second game back from injury. He played pretty good last week against the Tigers. Certainly the Tamworth crowd was loving him being there. I just think I think the South Sydney Rabbitohs will get this win against the Sharks, who unfortunately will be 4 in a row that they've lost. So the Rabbitohs for mine in that one. The first game on Sunday sees the Parramatta Eels take on the Dragons at CommBank Stadium. The Eels are in 11th position now, having dropped 3 spots, favourites in this game against the Dragons, who are 16th on the ladder. The last time this is the first time this year that these 2 teams have met, actually. Last time they met was at CommBank Stadium, and it was 48-14, so a massive win there to Parramatta. So the first time these 2 sides have met this year, and a big in for them is Dylan Brown. He is back after his 7-game suspension for an off-field incident, and Wonga Blake is out. He's replaced by Isaac Lumi for the Dragons, same side that went down to Manly last week at Wynn Stadium, so no changes there. So a very crucial game for Parramatta. They need to get this win, stay in touch with that top 8, potentially get back into the top 8. And it'll be an interesting game, this one. I'm hoping that Parramatta will put some points on the Dragons just to get that for and against back up, having lost to the Melbourne Storm last week, 46 points to 16. A few changes as well to the Parramatta side. Brendan Hands is the 18th man. Joey Lussick is his first game back in the NRL last week against Melbourne. He gets that starting position at hooker. Joe Offahengawi gets the starting prop position with RCG still suspended, and Ofahiki Ogden goes back to number 20 on the fresh reserves bench. Dijon Arcee as well, with Dylan Brown coming back. He's back to number 21. So a few changes there. Andrew Davey onto the bench, and Ryan Madison into that second row starting position. He'd previously been playing off the bench, so he's in that starting position now. So a few changes there, but look, as I said, the Parramatta Eels, they'll need to score points against the Dragons. I'm going to go Parramatta 13 plus in this game. I just think they'll turn it on. I really hope they do anyway. The last game of the round sees the Raiders take on the Tigers down there at GIA Stadium, following the two sides in the NRLW, the Raiders and the Tigers as well. So a double header down there for Canberra fans, so great to see that. The Raiders 5th, the Tigers unfortunately still on the bottom of the ladder. So look, there's been a struggle of a year for the Tigers. Big Stefano Utukamanu is out. Unfortunately, Alex Twell comes into the starting spot for him. Jared Croker is out this week. Sebastian Chris goes into the centres, and Jordan Rapana goes back to fullback for this game. Nick Kotrick comes onto the wing for the Canberra side. So a few changes there to the home side. You could say a replay of the 1989 grand final, but hey, that was a long time ago. Even though these two sides did play in that game. But look, Canberra have got massive. They need to win this game. They got massive implications if they lose. They've got a negative for and against. They would want to hope to put a score on the Tigers just to try and get that for and against back to more closer to the positive. But I think the important thing for the Raiders is they just need to get that win, get that 2 points. Don't worry about the negative for and against. Just get the 2 points. Stay within range of that top 4 and see what happens from there. So I'm going to tip the Raiders in this one at home. So my tips for the NRL is the Sea Eagles, the Warriors, the Panthers, the Broncos, the Knights, the Rabbitohs, the Eels, and the Raiders. My tips for the NRLW for this week, round 3, sees the Roosters, the Broncos, the Sharks, the Knights, and the Tigers. So there you have it. Round 3 in the NRLW and round 23 in the NRL. Happy tipping. Let me know if you follow my tips. Unfortunately, last week I only got 4 out of 8, so only 50% there last week. So I hope you did better than myself. I'm hoping to do better myself this week. You're not going to win tipping comps with only 4 out of 8. You need to get about 6, 7 consistently. Even a perfect round would be even better. So see how you go. Let me know your tips. Are you following mine? Have you got a couple of different? Thank you very much for listening. Enjoy your footy over the weekend. Stay tuned later this week for the interview style podcast with Mr. Feletti Matteo.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. See you next time.